So today I just wanted to take a quick look at the adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Obviously, we are only looking at the Halloween-themed film, which would be The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So this is a 1949 release, and during this period, what Disney had been doing, I guess, to prevent himself from losing money, because he had several films that he had worked on, some of which were too long to be shorts, but they were too short to be feature films. So what he did was he grabbed films with a similar theme, put them together, and there you go. Here is a movie. Check this out. So, and it's actually pretty good. I mean, he prevented himself from, once again, losing money. So this film itself, I have not watched it since elementary school. I remember being shown this in elementary school almost every year, and I looked forward to it. I thought it was a fun movie. Looking back at it as an adult from years of not having seen it, it's definitely a very cute movie. Honestly, there are only two scenes which I remembered from the film, and everything else was pretty much just a refresher for me. So I thought that in itself was very interesting. This story itself, obviously we're all familiar with the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman and whatnot, but what I thought was actually interesting, which obviously I didn't notice this as a kid because you don't really view or pay attention to things the same way, is the fact that the character of Ichabod is pretty much just as sleazy as Brom Bones, just on different levels. Ichabod, who of course is a schoolmaster who moved to the town of Sleepy Hollow, and it's obvious, or it's made very well known within the first few minutes of the film, that he is of limited means. He goes and eats at other people's house in order to supplement his income and, you know, pretty much keep himself fed. So he takes a liking, supposedly, to a young lady who has pretty much caught the interest of various men within the town. But the thing is, she is very much an heiress. So it's not necessarily the fact that he's smitten by her, it's actually her inheritance that he's interested in, which, you know, in my opinion, yeah, that's pretty sleazy, it's pretty trashy, but it is made known throughout the film that yes, he does have some sort of a attachment to her. And this is one of the scenes that I had actually remembered, is he is pretty much sitting at his podium. He has a book propped up and all you see is the top of his hat. In the classroom you see the kids just running amok and going nuts, and he's actually just laying down at the back of the podium fantasizing about this girl. So, you know, to some degree, yes, there is a degree of likening here. So once again, in order to save money, the female character, or the love interest, Katerina, she was actually modeled after Grace Martin from Make Mine Music. She also has, I guess you could say, you see that same template or design with Slewfoot Sue from Pecos Bill, and that was the segment from Melody Time. So yes, I mean, definitely, like I said, very clever techniques here, but it doesn't hurt or hinder the story. The Katerina character herself, she pretty much just carries herself by body language. She never actually says anything, but in my opinion, obviously she's, you know, some spoiled rich girl, but she's really not that great a person herself either. I mean, she's obviously interested in Brom Bones. She has these two men competing for her affections, but she's pretty much just using Ichabod in order to make Brom jealous, because I guess she doesn't want him getting too cocky and just being secure in himself that he has the girl. So she uses Ichabod to make him jealous and challenge him a bit, which he obviously does respond to. So the Song of the Headless Horseman, which is featured in the film, is actually considered one of the darker of the Disney songs. You also have the song Worthless from Brave Little Toaster, and as well as Hellfire from Hunchback of Notre Dame, which, honestly, I love the Hellfire song. For years that was honestly part of an inside joke that I had going on, but yeah, I mean, they're not bad songs. It's just, I guess, as far as the happy-go-lucky nonsense that Disney presents, then yes, they definitely are of a darker subject matter, but they're not necessarily grim. So I believe it was Thurl Ravencroft, and I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that name, but please excuse me, but he was originally set to sing the song The Headless Horseman, and obviously it got cut. They used Bing Crosby, but Ravencroft's version can actually be heard on a compilation CD which was released by Walt Disney Records. This is the Archive Collection Volume 1. So another thing that I found interesting is the fact that Ichabod Crane, obviously since Bing Crosby would be doing the narration, to a degree his design was influenced by that. Obviously the two gentlemen have larger ears, and of course Ichabod was given the larger ears, I guess just to reference Bing Crosby, but as well as obviously Ichabod Crane, his body type is also modeled after a crane, and this is actually what was explained in the book. Obviously he's slender, he's lanky, cranes have long beaks, he's got a long nose. You know, just a very subtle reference there, but you know, not bad. So eventually at some point in time, the two film shorts, which is Mr. Toad as well as Ichabod, those two stories, or The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, those two eventually were separated and sold separately. It has been brought to my attention that Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the solo release, is slightly shorter, but honestly the only thing I've actually seen that's the only difference between the two versions is that the I guess you could say the study or the library scene, the live action scene introducing the story, that's the only thing that's actually been cut out. So of course the short story itself, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was published in 1820, was written by Washington Irving. He was an American author living abroad, and interestingly enough, because apparently American authors were not viewed too highly of at that time period, his writing was actually considered superior, and supposedly English people actually questioned whether or not he was American. So, you know, that's one heck of a compliment there if you think about it. And one of the more interesting points, which was of course included in the story as well, is that it's hinted at in the cartoon that Ichabod is superstitious. You see him tossing salt over one shoulder. In the actual short story itself, we do gain the information that Ichabod's superstitious beliefs were influenced by a novel written by Cotton Mather. And if you are obviously a fan of Salem, that name is very familiar, and yes, that was an actual person, FYI. But the book that was referenced in the short story is History of New England Witchcraft, which that is not an actual book. What was actually hinted at was the book Memorable Providences relating to witchcrafts and possessions. And obviously, if you are familiar with Salem, you already know Cotton Mather is a Puritan minister. He also played a huge part in the Salem witch trials. So obviously at one of the Halloween dances that Ichabod attends, Brom Bones takes advantage of his superstitious beliefs. He tells the story of the Headless Horseman, and pretty much Ichabod pretty much goes home paranoid, riding home alone on his janky little horse, which, you know, it's not the horse's fault. You know, he should have been better fed, but you know, he definitely is more scarable. But we obviously know how the story ends. One of the more interesting scenes, which I loved, is obviously Ichabod has to cross the river so that the evil spirit cannot follow him, obviously because water is a purifier. It's also a symbol of life, so obviously the non-living cannot go near that. But as he crosses the covered bridge, the Headless Horseman removes his head and hurls it at Ichabod, and that's honestly, in my opinion, one of the coolest scenes in the entire film, and pretty much just the coolest animated scene I've ever seen, which says a lot because that's a Disney cartoon, and I don't really make a habit of watching Disney these days as an adult. So obviously Ichabod goes missing. They only find his hat. It is suspected that obviously the Headless Horseman got Ichabod, and then of course some well-wishers like to pretend that Ichabod moved to another town and married a wealthy widow and had a bunch of ugly Ichabod childrens with her. But, you know, I guess they have to soften it up a little since it's a kid's film. But one of the things that I found, or rather, one of the things that's very similar is the fact that Brom Bones, as well as the Headless Horseman, have a very similar looking horse, which would lead one to believe that Brom Bones is actually the one who did away with Ichabod, rather than an actual evil spirit. Of course, that's left open to interpretation, but, you know, that is a little too similar. But obviously this is also one of the films in which the bad guy winds up winning, which is very rare for Disney. Obviously, I guess it's more an issue of who's the lesser of the two evils. Brom Bones actually cared for Katerina. The thing is, he sets up Ichabod to get him out of the way, and like I said, we really don't know for sure whether or not he actually did kill Ichabod, or if he really did meet his untimely end with a ghost. But the two lead characters, the protagonist and antagonist, they're really not much different. Essentially, they're the same person, just on two different levels. They're not really that great people. Then again, Katerina isn't that great herself. So it's I guess you could say, a more realistic depiction of Disney characters in the fact that they're not one-dimensional, you know, this is the good guy and this is what he does. It's more, this is this person, and you get hints of what they really are like, which I think is interesting, especially in, I guess you could say, children's animation. It's not really something that one sees too often or one notices too much, but yeah, I mean, I pretty much consider them both sleazy characters. The thing is, in this one, in this story, Brom Bones actually gets away with his, so it's one of the rare occasions in which the bad guy actually gets the happy ending. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really seen this cartoon in years. I actually really enjoyed it. I don't know if it's one of the ones that you guys watched yearly also, just growing up, but I'd love to share thoughts with you in the comments section. But that is pretty much all I have for you today, and I will talk to you later.